Hello guys, welcome back to the Global Crime News Network. For today's episode, we're going to be kicking off a brand new series on the website, which is called Crimes of the Elite. So this is going to be Volume 1, Episode 1, whatever you call it. There will also be articles with further background on gcnn.com. That's g-cnn.com. There will be a collection of articles related to this topic, so if you're interested in this particular topic, Crimes of the Elite, there'll be a lot more stuff there for you to dive into. Anyway, on with today's episode, Crimes of the Elite. This is a series where we look at some of the most famous names, some of the most famous figures throughout history, be they politicians, presidents, prime ministers, philanthropists. And what we're going to be doing throughout this series is shining a spotlight on some of these people, some of these famous names and figures. They have a real good reputation, a really, really good reputation. And in many cases, media and even history will defend these people. Despite doing all these bad things, in a lot of cases even crimes, heinous crimes, horrible things, these people are still put up on some kind of pedestal in history as people with great reputations, great men, great women in some cases, when nothing could be further from the truth. History might show you one point of view of these people, but there's a key word in history: story. That's why we get so much of this made up bullshit from it. That's why official history is something that can be shredded quite easily. I don't get on with orthodox historians, to be honest with you. They have one view of what history is most of the time, and it's the official version of events. Now, in order for these people who are bad people to have good reputations, I think they would need a little bit of help along the way. These things don't just happen. You don't just get a good reputation when you're doing bad things and everybody can see you're doing bad things. So what tends to happen is the crimes and bad deeds of these people are often covered up or forgotten about, swept aside. And when you read about them in the official versions of history, it looks like they were heroes. Now, some examples of the types of people and names we're going to be focusing on throughout this series include Mother Teresa, who is, everybody knows, was depicted around the world as this savior, this godly, kind, gentle woman, which she was anything but. And again, you'll be able to find more background to this in the upcoming episodes. Another one was Gandhi. Gandhi's often portrayed as a very good man with a very good reputation. But when you delve into his background a little bit, and you find out that he was sleeping, literally, with underage girls at one point, it does make you question. It does make you wonder how a man who is doing such things can have these things covered up and be portrayed to the world as such a good man. The last example I have here is Kennedy, and a lot of conspiracy theorists are probably going to go at me for this one. But Kennedy is a man who is often also put on a pedestal by conspiracy theorists because he was part of one of the biggest conspiracies of all time, and the magnitude of that and everything that went with it and what came after it, the trauma that it inflicted on people, the psychological impact it had on people. It is often forgot during this tragedy that Kennedy was not actually a very good man at all. He was a drug-using womanizer, to be honest with you. And I think even members of his family will tell you that. Now, did that mean he didn't come good in the end? Not at all. He definitely did. I think Kennedy had an awakening at some point, which is what got him into a lot of trouble. Again, this will all be covered in an upcoming episode. of Crimes of the Elite, where we will be documenting a lot more on the Kennedy case. But this is just to give you a little example today of the kind of things we plan to do with this series. We plan to expose a side of certain people throughout history, certain historical figures who history has maybe lied to us about and given us a false account of who they are, and these people seem to have acquired a fake reputation. I've just done a video on Bill Gates on my channel, and if anybody's seen that, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. How Bill Gates uses the cover of philanthropy and being a charitable man to worm his way into global health policies and global health affairs, medication, vaccines, all that stuff that he shouldn't be a part of, Mr. Microsoft man. And even if he does give a lot of money to charitable causes, which he does, that doesn't mean that he has a right to what medications people receive. Remember, he's only funding, like he keeps saying. He's only funding. So stay out of the medication aspect then, Bill. Don't try and add some technology into medication, which he's trying to do. Don't have clinical trials in poorer countries where you skip straight to phase 3 because you want to bring out a new product. Bill Gates is definitely a perfect example of the kind of person and the type of figure I'm talking about who has a fake reputation. The type of individual that we'll be covering here during this series. The type of historical figure who is not who they say they are, and whose reputation was crafted by history rather than their actual behavior. And we're going to kick off the series with a controversial one, a nice controversial one. You know me, I'm all about the controversy. Actually, I'm only about alternate views and different perspectives on crime, but apparently that's controversial. Well, if you think that's controversial, what I have to say about this man today might rub you the wrong way, so if you're a Churchill fanboy, I would advise you to click off at this point. Everybody else who's open-minded and wants to hear a different opinion, this should be a good one. Right, so we're talking about Winston Churchill. Mr. Winston Churchill, the war hero. The guy who saved us, right? The guy who saved us from war. I've got some very, very controversial opinions on this man, and it can be backed up, what I say, but I just know people are not going to like it just because of who he is. But here at GCNN.com, we don't give a fuck about your feelings. We're here to have an open debate and talk some truths. So what is the truth about Churchill then? The truth is, Winston Churchill was a global elite bloodline member. He was connected to some of the richest and most powerful families in the world. Some of these families have incorporated networks and global companies and corporations around them, still in power to this day. They're connected to some of the oldest bloodlines in the world, some of the ancient royal bloodlines, such as the Merovingians. They connect back to the Babylonian times and Egypt. If you've ever wondered why there's a particular pattern of presidents, prime ministers, all being connected to royal bloodlines, it's because they're not only part of the same network, but some of these elites are actual bloodline members that connect directly to some of these bloodlines that I've been telling you about, such as the Merovingians, such as the Babylonians, the ancient and royal lines of Egypt. This is why when you look at genealogy, you find some interesting connections between the elites of the world. For example, this is proven, and I've talked about in my other videos, Bill Gates is a distant cousin of the Rockefellers. The Rockefellers are a distant cousin of the Rothschilds. George Bush was a distant cousin of Queen Elizabeth II. Churchill is a cousin of Obama. Churchill was also related to Dick Cheney, the man who lied to us about 9/11. Dick Cheney is a man who is also connected to the Bush family, a man who was working with Saddam Hussein, was one of the main profiteers of the Iraq War for his company Halliburton. You're talking about a network of people in power who, shall we say, keep it in the family. That's what we're basically talking about. Now, getting back to Churchill. Churchill was a part of the European aristocracy families. He was born at Oxford, London, Blenheim Palace, which is the ancestral home of the Marlborough family. Now, the Marlborough family are related to the Churchill family, and the Marlborough family are a bloodline, one of the richest in history. So Churchill was born at the Marlborough family palace, which is Blenheim Palace, their ancestral home, because he was part of that same bloodline. If you really do your genealogy on people in positions of power, you will find some stunning connections. And you will also probably come to find out that this is not by accident. They don't just happen to be distant cousins of each other, and they don't just happen to be related to this family by coincidence. It's because they are bred to do this. This is why the royal family in England was so desperate to keep hold of Diana. It was the bloodline of Diana they were after. They didn't care about her. They just wanted to continue the bloodline, keep it going. And a bit of research on this topic will also show you that Diana's mother was also a Rothschild. So you can see already from what I'm trying to show you here, there's a lot of connections, there's a lot of people connected to people. But as I said, these are not just regular people. These are people in positions of power, in the highest positions in the aristocracies, within secret societies, and they control banking, politics, media. If you ever hear the term global elite or deep state, this is what people are talking about, this group that I'm trying to describe. Now, it's not as simple as one group. Obviously, I told you the bloodlines go back into the ancient world, so it hasn't always been a straightforward case. There's been bickering between the bloodlines. There's been things go wrong. It's not a perfectly crafted plan to where everybody gets into where they're supposed to be. But I guarantee you, at least 90 to 95% of the genealogy will show that people were put in positions of power because of their bloodline, not because who they are or what they can do for the country. They put it simply down to their bloodline. Whoever is connected to the most royal ancient bloodlines is usually the one that will get the position of power in the end. And it was the same with Churchill. He was connected to an elite bloodline, which is why he was allowed to get away with so much. Now, people always talk about the fact that he saved us from war, and they talk about that as if it wipes the slate clean from all the other stuff he did, which it does not, because Churchill was responsible for things that you would deem almost war crimes. Now, what I've noticed is people don't really talk about this when it comes to this guy. They just talk about the fact that he saved us from war. But the guy is, I would say, and I think there's other writers who have said it throughout history, that he is, or if he's not, he's damn near a war criminal. And I'm going to give you some examples of this today. So Churchill replaced Neville Chamberlain as Prime Minister. That was on 11th of May 1940. Now, as soon as Churchill became Prime Minister, we noticed soon after that there was a mass bombing of civilian targets in Germany, which Churchill had orchestrated. Things like this are overlooked with this man, and I don't know why. Bombing civilian targets the minute you get in there. So is it a case of anyone will do? I mean, you're not killing Nazis, right? You're hitting civilians here. But how soon people forget. Now, Churchill was a member of the Freemasons. Now, this is often overlooked or played down throughout historical books or historical accounts of Churchill, and I feel this is done to protect his reputation. Now, one thing about this is that it might be played down or often overlooked, as I said, to protect his reputation, but official history does acknowledge it, that he was a Freemason. He was an active Freemason. He was actually initiated at the Stud Home Lodge, number 1591, at the Café Royal in May of 1901. Now, people will probably say just because he was a Freemason doesn't mean he was a bad person, which is true. It's very true. Because one thing that is often overlooked about the Freemasons is you only advance into higher levels of knowledge once you reach a certain level, and you have to be like, I think, 30 degrees or higher to actually know anything about what's going on behind the scenes in these organizations. No one knows what really goes on behind the scenes in these secret societies, but we've got glimpses of it with Bohemian Grove and what was going on there with the rituals, the satanic rituals to a giant owl. The world's political leaders and religious leaders all dressed up in weird clothes and dancing and chanting around a 40-foot owl. I mean, we've got glimpses of what these secret societies might do, but just because we know about them, we still don't have the full picture. When they say just because Churchill was a Freemason doesn't mean anything. On one level, yes. But let's not forget how the Freemasons are structured. They're structured just like any other company, any other organization, any other university. So you have to work your way up. So the majority of the people on the bottom don't know what the hell's going on. They're just joining the Freemasons. This is great. Like, they don't get, to access the higher knowledge, just like you don't get to access, your meetings with the top bosses or the owners unless you're at a particular level and you can be trusted or you've earned that degree, that position, whatever. If Churchill was a member of the Freemasons and he's the Prime Minister, he's not just any Freemason working there on the bottom level, is he? He's going to be 30 degrees or more, probably higher than that, probably 32, maybe 33, probably beyond that. I don't know, who knows? What I'm trying to say, and the point I'm trying to make, is that he's not just going to be one of the students, one of the workers down at the bottom of the uni or the company. You know what I mean? He's going to be one of the top level owners, one of the people that have say, or one of the people that know people that can get things done. And to say that him being a Freemason didn't matter is not true, because historians in Bradford, England found evidence that Churchill's policies were heavily influenced by the fact that both he and King George II of Greece were both Freemasons, and obviously quite close. Why were they close? Because of their bloodline connections. And in fact, it was actually Churchill who in 1943 sent 5,000 troops to Athens to restore King George II to the throne, despite the fact that he was detested by the Greeks as well as many others. And he ignored the fact that at the time, troops were needed in other places. There were other things going on. This was not a priority to get this man put back on the throne. The people didn't even like him. But Churchill made sure he got back on the throne, didn't he? Now, Churchill has close ties to both the Rothschild and the Harriman families. His daughter actually married into the Harriman family. She married one of the Harriman brothers, Averell Harriman. The Harriman family, along with the Bush family, are the ones that were responsible for the Union Banking Corporation. The Union Banking Corporation, ran by the Bushes and the Harrimans, was where tons of money was funneled out of America from the richest families in the world, such as the Harrimans, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Bushes, into Germany to fund the Nazi Party. These families were actually responsible for funding Nazi parties. It's on record, they were funding money out of America at a time when America was going through the Great Depression. They had enough and start a Nazi movement. What I'm trying to show you here is the kind of people that Churchill moved with. I'm trying to show you what kind of things they're into, what their behavior is like, instead of looking at their reputation. Now, Churchill joined the Freemasonic Albion Lodge, which was an ancient order of Druids. This was an ancient sect or cult that Churchill was part of. Now, Churchill joined this Albion Lodge, the ancient order of the Druids, at Blenheim Palace in 1908. So again, at the ancestral home of the Marlborough family. His father was Lord Randolph Churchill. Randolph Churchill was funded by the House of Rothschild while he was Chancellor at the time in the mid-1800s. And his closest friend was Nathaniel Rothschild. The same Nathaniel Rothschild who said, that's his best friend. Now, apparently, Lord Randolph Churchill died still in debt to the Rothschilds. I think it was around 65,000, which was quite a lot at the time. And his son Winston Churchill, was also in debt to the Rothschilds at one point. And Winston was a close friend of Lord Victor Rothschild. Lord Victor Rothschild was the orchestrator of British intelligence, basically. I said once in another video that a lot of these powerful elites will set up secret societies or intelligence agencies in front of them, military networks, things like that, just to make sure you can't get to them, you know what I mean? The Churchill family also have close links to the Cecil family, who controlled him. The Cecils have long-term connections to the Jesuits, the Rothschilds, Habsburgs, British monarchs, and the families of the black nobility in Italy. And the Marlborough family, who the Churchills are related to, I told you about earlier, they're also responsible for putting William of Orange on the throne back in the day. So you see how Churchill was influential in putting King George II back on the throne in Greece. And now we see another instance of the Marlborough family using similar tactics to put William of Orange on the throne. So as David Icke always says, presidents are not elected, they're selected. So it would seem that history has given us a false image of Churchill, because I haven't heard about none of this in any of the history books. All I ever hear is he saved the British Isles from tyranny. But if you look at his behaviour and his actions around this time, behind the scenes, it seems like he was very much part of the tyranny. For example, an American decoding officer, Tyler Kent, was jailed for exposing that Churchill and Roosevelt, another bloodline member, and a Freemason, that Churchill and Roosevelt were communicating in coded messages discussing how they could ensure that war broke out. Now, Colonel Ramsay, who was the Conservative MP at the time, was also jailed just for sharing this information. So just for putting it out there, he got jailed. Ramsay was jailed under a law called Regulation 18B, and it was introduced just before the war. Now, this regulation that they jailed Ramsay under, this Regulation 18B, it was related to terrorist acts. So basically, they had no grounds for putting him in jail because he didn't do anything wrong. He's not a terrorist. You know, he's not a traitor. He's seen something and he's presenting it. He's not trying to get a story. He's revealing what he saw. So 2 people during that time tried to expose that Churchill was communicating with Roosevelt in an encoded message talking about how they could ensure war broke out. 2 people try and expose this. 2 people were jailed under completely unjust laws. Regulations that don't even match their crime, I guess. What was the crime? Sharing information? Now, apparently an admiral's wife was also jailed under Regulation 18B. after being cleared of all charges. So she was cleared of all charges and they still chucked her in jail under Regulation 18B. So this was a bloodline tactic of keeping a lid on things, keeping people quiet. And just by coincidence, who was behind this Regulation 18B law? Lord Victor Rothschild, close friend of Winston Churchill. Churchill actually began using this Regulation 18B the minute he came to power. As soon as he got in there, he was like, yes, I'm using this. And this was put into practice by his close friend and associate, Lord Victor Rothschild. And the same people that Churchill has these ties to, these elite families and these bloodline members such as the Rothschilds, the Harrimans, the Bushes, the Rockefellers, all these people. If you do in-depth research on anything around the war, you'll see for yourself that these people were responsible for funding Nazis. So when people keep hitting me with the narrative of Churchill came to save the day, it seems to me that Churchill is moving with the same people that initiated this war, the same people that started this war, the same people that are manipulating people into this war. So when you talk about Churchill maybe saving the day, to me it now looks like maybe he just called off his friends. These people are bloodline connected family members. These people take this bloodline bullshit very seriously. Whether you believe it or not, it's true, and they do. They take it very seriously. Churchill was a bloodline member. He's going to have been raised with that mentality of being raised for a purpose, raised to do something, raised to breed with somebody. That kind of mentality. Now, even Churchill's behaviour, I could give you a few examples here that will tell you he's not the man that history says he is. People talk a lot of good about Churchill and forget a lot of the bad. The fact that Churchill was a racist, a somewhat open racist, in fact. He had the same kind of ideological views as the Nazis, who viewed their race as being superior. There was the view that there was a hierarchy to race. And Churchill believed the same thing. Churchill's view of a race hierarchy put white Protestants at the top, white Catholics second, and it was Indians and Africans. So obviously he's telling you ethnic minorities are on the bottom of this pile. God knows where he puts the other races because he hasn't even included them. But these were the views of a man who was supposed to be opposing Hitler at the time. You've got similar views, you've got similar theories, yet you oppose these people. You believe white Protestants are at the top of the race structure, top of the race hierarchy. Now, something that's also overlooked about Churchill is that 10 years after he allegedly defeated the Nazis, he was part of a anti-immigration policy in which the slogan was "Keep England White." That's what he was encouraging people to say. That's the slogan he wanted to catch on. Keep England white. Churchill was even gone on record in history as saying, "I hate Indians," and saying that they're beastly people with a beastly religion. Things like this he's openly stated. And it almost seems like he not only hated India and Indians with a passion, he was also not shy about sharing that opinion with the world. Now, looking at some of his actions, I think will tell you what kind of man you're dealing with and why he might be a member of a Freemasonic lodge or a Freemasonic fraternity, whatever you want to call it, a secret society. He fits in with these people because he's just like these people, and this can be evidenced by his behavior and his actions. For example, in the Bengal famine of 1943, Churchill, instead of sending food to these people, when he had it, he sent food to pass by their country directly. Food that was to be used for storage somewhere else. So you got all these poor people looking up at the planes, thinking that food's coming, finally they're saved, and those planes just carry on flying by. The man was evil, pure and simple. He had an evil nature. And this is exemplified in his war tactics. So not only is he responsible, as I told you earlier, for bombing civilian targets and passing by a famine country with large quantities of food, dangling food right in front of their face, and then taking it away, he is also responsible for what is known in war terms as the circle back. The circle back is when a plane is about to drop a bomb and it's flying over a country, a town, village, wherever it's about to drop the bomb on. The people will often look up, see the plane coming, and flee for shelter, whether that be in their homes or hiding wherever they go. They seek to find shelter from the bomb that's about to drop. Now what usually happens is, if they see that the plane passes by, they think, oh, it's just a normal plane, it's not going to drop a bomb, it's flying away. Churchill would instruct those pilots to circle back. Circle back was to wait until these people return back to the street. So when they think the plane's gone and everything's safe, they can come back out into the street. Then you circle back and drop the bomb. Now, I think any country that you drop any type of bomb on is going to get the message straight away and people are going to be hurt. But he wanted to make sure he got them all. He wanted to make sure that those planes circled back. He wanted to use deception, which is part of the whole Freemasonic, satanic, secret society network, which he is very much part of. And this is why he uses tactics such as this. Imagine that. Circle back on people. It's bad enough you're dropping bombs on people, but to actually make sure, to go out of your way to make sure you hit them. And I'm pretty sure there's actually children in there. You know, no thought for that. He was just evil by nature. It's exemplified in his war tactics, and if he wasn't so known for being the one who defeated the mighty Hitler, his legacy would be evil war tactics, wrongdoings, and racism. Churchill is a perfect example of how false idols are created. Everything that I've said today will be dismissed instantly or will offend somebody in Britain or England because you're speaking about the great war hero. But you see, when I talk, I'm talking about the real Churchill. When these people get offended and stuff, they're thinking of the false idol, the image of the false idol that's been created throughout history. As I said at the beginning of the video, history, his story, it's a story. It's a load of nonsense most of the time. Some made up crap that is twisted to suit whichever narrative these global elites want to push. They want to push the narrative that Churchill was this hero. I've just given you a few examples here today of what you might call, plain and simply, evil. There's no goodness there. A real hero doesn't lock up people for sharing information. A real hero doesn't make sure to take the lives of children and innocent civilians. A real hero is not racist, doesn't harbor any hate towards a specific race, which Churchill obviously did. Now, whether you like it or not, Churchill was part of an elite network, a satanic network, of the richest and most powerful bloodlines in the world. He was not a hero, he was a master manipulator, an evil man, and a man whose reputation covers over the cracks of the foundation in his character.